Have you ever wondered why this meme of you have to put in the hard work is so widespread in the context of the manosphere, and indeed way beyond the manosphere? It's very well subscribed to by all manner of men peddling all manner of goods, people such as Chad Williamson, as an example. And it's ubiquitous. I've talked a lot about hard work, and I've gone to some pretty nitty-gritty details about that, and some of this will be a rebeating of certain drums here. But I think it's an important topic to cover, because beyond the axiomatic truth of whether or not hard work is the key asset to all success or not, there's also the question of exploitation and the question of manipulation. So the general premise is that in order to achieve anything in life, and especially as a man, as a real man, you need to put in the hard work, which usually amounts to lots of hours during the day being sunk into some activity, be it work or building a business or working out or exercising or whatever it might be. And that is the key to success. That is the key to your masculinity. You define yourself by the amount of work you put in, because men are, at the end of the day, rather obviously, right, workhorses, work dogs. That's what they are, and that's what they're supposed to be. Notice, by the way, by way of contrast, when you look at women and advertisements and various YouTube channels directed at women, run by women, they almost never talk about this hard work meme. Sometimes they might, but generally speaking, they have a different message. And this is because it's just a fact that the hard work meme resonates with men. Men, as I said, are basically, at the end of the day, for better or worse, as a result of biology, history, and environment, beasts of burden. And so we are then encouraged to live out that existence as beasts of burden. The best way to tap into it is to talk about the hard work that you have to put in, right? Now, there are a lot of things in the context of the manosphere specifically that are a bit strange, and more broadly with respect to masculinity. So, for example, right, this idea of working yourself to the bone and getting up super, super early and barely sleeping. I can tell you personally, because as many of you know, I barely sleep. Barely sleeping is not good for you. It's terrible for your testosterone, for example, which is one of the great virtues of the manosphere and masculinity, to be high T. It is terrible for your testosterone. It's terrible for your lifespan. It's terrible for all-cause mortality, illness. There's nothing good about not sleeping enough. And yet, lots of these gurus out there, from people such as Jocko Willink to various red pillars, will say, you got to put in the work. I only sleep 4 hours a day. I go to bed at 10 and wake up at 2 a.m. or some crazy nonsense like that. Whether it's true or not, of course, is an entirely different question. And they will go on about this. And you're supposed to emulate that somehow. And again, we talked about deception here. Many times these claims are just fatuous. Many times these claims are just not true. And you as an audience member have no way of tracking that. If somebody tells you, I'm busting my butt 24/7, I only sleep 3 to 4 hours a day, you as an individual have zero way of verifying that claim. It's simply not possible. And so you have, say, the sleep thing. Then you have this constant notion of work, 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 and never resting. Well, on some level, I've said this many times, yeah, you do have to put in some amount of work to achieve anything. How much work that is, what the origin and source of your ability to perform that work is, these are separate issues, but from nothing comes nothing. That much is obvious. But this idea of just spending a lot of time working, period, just putting in a copious amount of hours into something, in and of itself as a valuable thing to engage in, is questionable. And yet, again, this is the manipulation that's taking place, because these self-same gurus will also say the same thing about how much work they're putting in, because after all, they're only sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night, because the rest of the day, the rest of the 20 hours a day, they're just working, right? So you have the succession of nonsense that's being spouted across the board, within the manosphere, outside of the manosphere, almost always by men, about all the things they need to do in order to be successful, in order to achieve, in order to be looked upon in a positive light. And the problem here, again, as I've said a few times now, is a lot of it is manipulation, a lot of it is hyperbole, a lot of it is just outright lying. And here's another thing. If you're selling products, specifically, that are supposed to sort of boost your ability to work, or kind of go hand in hand with the mantra of working yourself to the bone till you just drop, well, those products are going to sell pretty well too. Buy my product to help you do X. It'll boost your energy. It'll do that. And you'll be able to work even harder on the 2 hours of sleep you're getting as you're busting your butt trying to achieve greatness and chasing your dreams. This sort of nonsense. It's part and parcel, and you see it everywhere. But I have to come back to the core issue here. Work itself is a requirement, a necessity, but it is not sufficient. Just putting in the work is a meaningless phrase, as many of you know, obviously. And the real question is, when you want to talk about the work you have to put in, is how are you working? Are you working efficiently? Are you working in a calculated, tactical manner? They rarely talk about this, in part because when you're working in a methodical, efficient, calculated manner, questions such as just putting in raw hours become less relevant, less important, and it takes away from their message. So it's all about putting in the work, as many hours as possible. So, yeah, people put in work, but how they make use of those hours is important. And oftentimes, the tactical use of time is much more useful in getting things done than simply putting in raw hours in a thoughtless and mindless fashion. And lest we repeat ourselves, and we will be repeating ourselves here, because I think it is a very, very important lesson to be learned. Everyone varies in their ability to quote-unquote put in the work, because your ability to put in the work is primarily genetic. The degrees of laziness you see between people, their willingness to do certain things or not do certain things, their psychology regulates that. And their psychology is not a circumstance that they've created themselves. They were saddled with it at birth, and indeed the environment will interact with that and have an effect, sure. But some people are just innately less lazy than others, and other people are just innately more lazy than others. And although you can tweak it a little bit, you can tinker with it here and there, the general trend will remain the general trend throughout that individual's life. And so, just put in the work is a meme for this reason as well. Now, there's another psychological reason why people are always obsessed with talking about, you gotta put in the work, bro, yeah, put in the work. It's simple. People feel, men specifically, connected to the raw hours and time they put into something. And they get very upset at workarounds. I've talked about this before. About the weight issue, for example, the obesity epidemic, if you will. We have these drugs on the market now to basically reduce appetite, and appetite regulation, again, is the key to not being fat, basically. When you're not very hungry, you don't eat much. That's how it is. And you just inject it. I think there's some oral medications by now as well. And that's it. And you just don't feel hunger, and then you lose weight. And then you have this crowd of people who say that's cheating, or these people are just lazy because they don't want to put in the work. But the reality is who really wants to put in the work? If you had a button you could press that would instantly give you $20 million, or you could spend 30 years, maybe 35 years having to work for that money, which would you do? Which would you choose? Very obviously, I think, you would probably press the button. Now, maybe in a public platform, you would say, no, I wouldn't press the button. I would work my butt off for decades trying to get that money, chasing the money, sure. But behind closed doors, as is often the case, what would you probably choose? You would choose to press the button, and then money would just appear in your coffers like that. And that's true of basically anything and everything. So these people, for example, who've not taken advantage of these GLP-1 agonists, who've gone through weight loss, say the traditional way. Now, props to them for having the right genes and psychology in order to do that and maintain it. But honestly, look at the landscape of humanity. Most people would prefer to press a button, and that's just how it is. They feel that their work has been vitiated by the existence of it. I don't necessarily think that's the case. There is, for example, some enjoyment in the process of engaging in a long-term activity. that requires a fair degree of work of you. That's true. But I think collectively we need to recognize and understand that all this nonsense about putting in the work is just that. It's nonsense. It's nonsense because there's a high degree of variability genetically in our psychologies and our ability to even engage in degrees of work. Take a room of 100 men and they're all going to vary immensely in their ability to put out work and to sustain that pace of work. And on top of that, you have these people out there that are just outright lying, because you never know what's going on behind closed doors in terms of what they're actually taking or doing or not doing, right? Almost none of these people, I can assure you, who are talking about only sleeping a few hours a night are actually doing that. I say this to somebody who only sleeps a few hours a night. It's hell on earth. Then you have these laborious work routines, including workouts and actual work and all these other things. You have no idea what they're doing exactly. And then you have other things, and we've known this for a long time, that celebrities, people in the media, they cheat. If they're the workout guru types, a lot of them are juiced to the gills or taking steroids. And a lot of the other ones who claim that they just are losing weight and just in shape, they're taking advantage of medical enhancements in addition to all of that. There are some run-of-the-mill streamers out there who are not fitness influencers or anything, who've lost a lot of weight all of a sudden, and they claim to have done it normally after years and years and years of failing all of a sudden. This sounds like a case for GLP-1 agonists or Ozempic. Now, I'm not faulting them for doing that necessarily. What I'm faulting them for is lying about it, right? Because again, everyone has this notion that the key to success is just hard work. Everything just comes down to hard work. And people don't like, quote unquote, cheating. Well, the news is that everyone cheats if they can. Again, if you're put before the two options, pressing a button and getting $20 million, or spending 3+ decades to do that, which would you choose? Honestly, be honest with yourself. I know which I would choose. Obviously, I'm going to press the button. Obviously, I'm going to do that. And that's why I'm talking about this topic. There's just a lot of deception in general about hard work and why these people use it as a cudgel to beat over your head as a man, to manipulate you, and to lie about what they're really doing behind closed doors, because you are not privy to that, as I said. And all you have to go on is the words of these quote-unquote influencers and gurus, who at the end of the day don't give a rat's buttocks about you. They're trying to sell you stuff. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to level with ourselves about the reality behind things, and that's what we're doing here. But in any event, as always, thank you for tuning in. Many special thanks to my very generous patrons on Patreon, my generous donors on PayPal. You guys are the best. Without you, this channel could not exist. Thank you so much. And if you can engage in the usual YouTube jazz of liking the video, hitting the bell icon to be reminded of my videos, sharing the video, leaving a comment, subscribing if you're not yet a sub, be much appreciated. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out next time. Until then, may the gods truly watch over you. Bye-bye for now.
If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.